YouTube, welcome to our introduction to freeze drying with our Harvest Right freeze dryer. This video is sponsored by Liberty Preparedness. So let's get started with the basics. How does a freeze dryer work? Step 1, so you prepare your food and you're going to place them on the stainless steel trays and you're going to load them up onto the shelves in the freeze dryer. Now the freeze dryer is going to freeze it super cold, negative 40 degrees or colder. Step 2, after the food is fully frozen, the freeze dryer makes a strong vacuum around the food. The food is slightly warmed, which causes moisture in the food to sublimate and turn to water vapor. The vapor is then discarded. Step 3, once completely dry, remove the food and seal it up inside moisture and oxygen-proof containers to preserve freshness. Harvest Right provides their own Mylar bags and a sealer, which is super convenient for this. I've had the opportunity to use the Harvest Right freeze dryer over the last couple of weeks. But before that, I had no experience, and so it's a little intimidating the first time you use it, but Harvest Right provides owner's manuals and the guide to freeze drying. These are super helpful, and I highly suggest reading through it after you get your freeze dryer set up. One of the most common questions is, will it freeze dry? And usually the answer is yes. There is so much that you can freeze dry, and there are a few exceptions, and we'll get into that in the next few slides. The things you can freeze dry include fruits, vegetables, meats, dairy, meals, and desserts. I'm very excited about being able to prepare meals in our freeze dryer. I have used a canner, and honestly, it can be a little intimidating because you have to follow the canning recipe exactly, otherwise your food might not be shelf stable. But with the freeze dryer, you have so much more flexibility, which to me is one of the best perks of the freeze dryer over pressure canning meals. Some of the things you need to stay away from when you're freeze drying is very oily foods, like butter, for example, cannot be freeze dried. Honey, syrups, and jams, they tend to make a sugary mess. Bread, cake, and muffins. There is an exception with that. If you slice it very thinly, there is a way you can reconstitute it, but otherwise they turn into a soggy texture. When we got our freeze dryer set up, it was perfect timing because all of the peas from our garden were ready to harvest. So that was one of the first things that we tried out in our freeze dryer. So step 1, after I harvested them, I washed them really well and I cut them up. After they were all chopped up, we loaded all of the trays to go into the freeze dryer. And I found it helpful to pre-freeze the trays in our kitchen freezer. Now we're ready to load the trays up and place them in the freeze dryer. And it's really super simple. You just hit start. The digital screen up in the corner is super helpful. It'll tell you which stage your food is in. Right now you can see it is freezing. After it freezes, the screen keeps you updated and it tells you the drying time. The next step is process complete. The freeze dryer will give you a couple different options. The first one is no defrost. This is when you want to conserve electricity and you choose to let the room air temperature warm up or defrost the freeze dryer. The next one is more dry time. So you're gonna pull the food out of the freeze dryer and test it. We'll go into that in the next couple of slides. But basically you want to make sure the food is thoroughly dried. The next one is defrost. So this is where the machine is going to manually melt all the ice inside. That way you can run the next batch a lot sooner. Remember to empty your water bucket after each batch because if the valve is open and the tubing is in a full bucket, it will back siphon and spoil the food during your next batch. Here's another picture of the freeze dryer screen. It says keep drain valve open, remove product from dryer, close door. So it's pretty helpful for people who are new at this. Just follow the instructions that the freeze dryer gives you and you'll be fine. So here comes the most satisfying part. We're going to empty the trays out of the freeze dryer and load them into all of the bags. Place an oxygen absorber in each bag. We made the mistake of forgetting to do this in a few bags, and it's just important to remember this step because freeze-dried food can absorb moisture out of the air, which can spoil it and prevent it from lasting as long. The bonus tip of this video is if you are preserving anything that has a thick skin around it, such as blueberries or cherry tomatoes, apricots, be sure to slice the fruit in half so that the moisture can escape. We tried doing blueberries and we had the issue of some of them freeze-dried perfectly and other ones, such as this one, were not quite freeze-dried enough to preserve. Harvest Right even talks about this in their guidebook. Their suggestion is to place the food in between two lids and then use a knife to cut in between the lids. It's a good time saver to be able to cut a lot of produce in half in a short amount of time. But I guess the moral of the story is use your online resources and the guidebook before trying new food items. If we had done that, we would have been able to preserve these blueberries. These, I wasn't comfortable packaging them up because it was hard to tell visually which ones were not dried all the way. So we just ate them and they were pretty delicious. If you've ever had a crunchy blueberry, they're pretty good. And that's it for today. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video from Liberty Preparedness, where we learn about becoming prepared for the upcoming days. Thanks for watching.